Well, the drama of the US midterms, billed as the most important elections in living memory, a referendum on Donald Trump, and even a battle for the future of America itself. Trump's party kept the Senate, but lost the House, and that changes things. Policies like the wall, his chances of being impeached, even his campaign for a second term. Oh, and he's finally fired the Attorney General. Why now? Well, let's bring it all together here in the Nexus. Hello, I'm Matthew Moore, and today in the Nexus, the Democrats are back. Should President Trump be worried? Well, we have some great guests to answer that one, including the prominent Trump campaigner, Mika Mosbacher. We also have a very relieved Democrat and academic, Jason Nichols, and the hardest working man in journalism, Simon Marks. And last, but not least, a Republican politician who was fighting to keep his seat in Texas, James White. It was a nail-biting evening for him, and no doubt for the president.
Americans will go to the polls in one of the most important elections of our entire lives.
High-stakes midterm election, and
the ballots voters cast will decide to elect a caravan of migrants, part of an apparent last-minute push to rally his base before the midterm elections.
Democrats want open borders, and they want to invite caravan after caravan into our country.
They'll be like, look, caravan. Then they're giving tax cuts to their billionaire friends.
Officials put the number at more than 7,000 men, women, and children.
Now, I'm not saying they're all criminals. What I am asking is, who are they?
Who is in this caravan? Everyone you've ever seen in your nightmares, Flora.
He is using fear and hate to motivate his base.
If enough Democratic members of Congress win to flip control of either the House or the Senate to the Democratic Party, the actions of the Trump White House and the Trump administration will finally be overseen. They will be scrutinized. If need be, they will be investigated.
We cannot turn any part of this government over to these radical, hardcore Democrats and their mouthpieces in the media.
Everything we have achieved, and it's monumental, is at stake in this election.
There's only one real check on bad policy, and that is you and your vote. You.
If that army of Trump gets out there, if they vote today, we win.
This is the first time the Democrats get an opportunity to register their dissatisfaction with the Trump era.
Voters going to vote in record fashion.
The Democrats will win the majority in the U.S. House of Representatives.
So cable news wasn't sure if it was a blue wave, but we here at Late Night can confidently say that it was at least a blue ripple.
If he thinks that the media is annoying, wait till he meets a Democratic House that has subpoena power.
They're going to begin immediately 2 investigations on impeachment, of all things.
It is the end of one-party rule in the United States, thank God, and the beginning of a new Democratic Party, younger, browner, cooler, more women, more veterans.
Hopefully Democrats will be what they have been unwilling to do in the past, and that's come to the table and actually do the job they were elected to do.
It really could be a beautiful bipartisan type of situation.
Well, it could be, but what are the chances? Let's go straight to Washington and Simon Marks. After 2 years of frustration, Simon, is a beautiful bipartisan relationship on the minds of Democrats like Nancy Pelosi? Really?
Absolutely not, Matthew. I've been here long enough to observe a number of these midterm election cycles, and as soon as they're over, in the immediate hours after they're over, the president of the day and the congressional leaders of the day briefly talk, as President Trump did there, about the possibility of a beautiful moment in which everybody starts working together, and within hours and incredibly rapidly this week, it all totally dissolved. Battle lines are now going to be drawn. We are heading into a 2-year period of scorched earth politics between President Trump on the one hand, who desperately wants to secure re-election to the White House, and the Democrats, on the other hand, who are absolutely determined to stop
So
him.
realistically then, what are the Democrats' priorities now they're back?
Well, look, I mean, I think they are going to have the capacity, as soon as Congress convenes, the new Congress in January, to derail Donald Trump's legislative agenda. He's not going to be able to get very much done. Sure, they may find the odd issue on which they can find some common ground, prescription drug pricing, maybe an infrastructure bill, but in big terms, Donald Trump's ability now to govern and to make good on the promises that he made to his voters back in the 2016 campaign faces serious obstacles, and Democrats who will have the power to begin a whole raft of investigations and probes of things that the White House has been up to over the last 2 years. So the only way in which he's going to be able to act is to begin his presidential re-election campaign right now.
Well, we're going to get into those subjects in just a moment. Let's go west to Texas. And James White is standing by for us. James, first of all, did you hold on to your seat?
Absolutely. I'm extremely proud to represent 170,000 Southeast Texans in Polk, Tyler, Jasper, Newton, and Hardin counties. And we were able to regain their confidence and trust by 83-17 margin.
Can you see a beautiful bipartisan relationship at the federal level?
I guess so. I mean, it's this divided type government at the national level is historically is something very common, at least since World War II. So we'll see how it works out.
Well, let me ask you one more question. Now, Donald Trump,
Yes, sir.
after the midterms were over, he put out this tweet. Let's take a look at this. Think of how his position with Republicans improves. All the candidates who won tonight, they realize how important he is because of what he did in campaigning for them. They owe him their political career. And he says in response to that, thanks, I agree. What do you think, James? Do you owe your political career to him? Was he a good standard bearer for you or a liability?
Well, we can rephrase that question many ways. I'm a strong supporter of President Trump. My district is a strong supporter of President Trump. And we believe when President Trump is successful, Southeast Texas is successful, and this entire state and nation is successful.
James, thank you very much. If you take a look at the results, got a couple of graphics for you here. Well, yes, the Senate was held. In fact, the seats were increased for the Republicans.
Thank God.
You take a look at the House, well, the Democrats are back in charge, but hardly a blue wave. What do you think, Jason? Are you relieved or are you disappointed or both?
I'm actually relieved. I think that we did very well in the House. We only needed 23 seats. We added 30 some odd seats. No one thought we were going to take the Senate. And the only people we lost in the Senate were some people that I would call Republicrats. They weren't real Democrats. They weren't really with our agenda. And you really need 60 votes to move a lot of legislation forward in the Senate. And the Republicans still don't have that. So I don't feel like we lost out.
If this was a referendum on President Donald Trump, as most people build it, how did he do in relation to previous presidents in recent memory? Mika, how would you answer that?
Well, first of all, even though the president isn't on the ballot, the truth is that people in this country were voting for or against the president's policies. And while we lost 28 seats, I mean, we knew history wasn't on our side. Normally, the political party in the White House loses one or both chambers of the U.S. Congress. But Obama had a disastrous first term. That midterm, he lost 63 seats. It was a bloodbath. We had not seen that many seats lost in decades. Clinton, for example, lost 52 seats. So I look at the margins and the fact that we lost very few seats in comparison to prior presidents tells me that this bodes well for 2020. And we did historically pick up 3+ seats in the Senate.
Mika, do you think it was a mistake to go on and on about this caravan? Should he have stuck to the economy? Before you answer that, I just want to show you the key advertisement that the Republicans used to go on and on about the caravan. Have a watch of this.
The 7,000 migrant caravan crossing Mexico, marching toward our border. Dangerous illegal criminals like cop killer Luis Bracamontes don't care about our laws. America cannot allow this invasion. The migrant caravan must be stopped. President Trump and his allies will protect our border and keep our families safe. America's future depends on you. Stop the caravan. Vote Republican.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
Mika, the demographics of the United States are changing. Does the Republican Party have to put this sort of an issue to the back burner and campaign on their strengths, like the economy, if they want to increase their voter base?
The political strategist James Carville had a famous line during the Clinton campaign: "It's the economy, stupid." And the economy was the real story in this election, especially with 3.7% record unemployment, 4.0 to 4.1% economic growth. The economy is roaring. Indeed, after the midterms, the stock market tipped up 500 points. So that was the number one issue. However, health care was important, especially with Democratic voters. And then immigration has always been a hot button for Republicans because we're the party of law and order. So that is one of the reasons that President Trump did highlight the caravans. Now, that was a shock ad. It wasn't the only it wasn't the only nasty ad that was run during these midterms. There were many all over the country.
That's true.
Here's a motivating factor.
That's true on both sides. But this is the ad that Jim Acosta, a CNN reporter, was referring to, and he, a day after the election, clashed with the president over this. Let's have a listen to their exchange.
One of the statements that you made in the tail end of the campaign in the midterms. That
here we go.
That, well, if you don't mind, Mr. President, that this caravan was an invasion. As you know, Mr. President,
I consider it to be an invasion.
As you know, Mr. President,
I think you should let me run the country. You run CNN.
All right.
And if you did it well, your ratings
would
would
be
be much better.
If I may ask one other question, Mr. President, if I may ask one other question, are you worried?
That's enough. That's enough.
Mr. President,
that's
enough. I was going to ask one of the other folks.
That's enough.
Pardon me, ma'am. Mr.
Excuse
President,
me, that's enough.
Mr. President, I had one other
Peter,
question,
let's
if
go.
I may ask, on the Russia investigation. Are you concerned that you may have
I'm not concerned about anything with the Russian
investigation
investigation because it's a hoax. That's enough. Put down the mic.
Mr. President.
CNN should be ashamed of itself having you working for them. You are a rude, terrible person. You shouldn't be working for CNN. Go ahead.
I think that's unfair.
You're a very rude person. The way you treat Sarah Huckabee is horrible. And the way you treat other people are horrible. You shouldn't treat people that way.
Well, who better to ask about this than Simon Marks? Simon, this is quite amusing for most people, but there is something serious going on here. Jim Acosta has had his hard pass, his access to the White House removed. What do you make of that?
Well, there are two things that are going on here, Matt, and they're both sinister. One is the use by the Republicans not of a shock ad, as Mika was suggesting, but of lies about this caravan and the imminent invasion that President Trump was predicting, co-opting the military to send 7,000 troops to the US border with Mexico to defend the country against an invasion that wasn't. Operation Faithful Patriot, they called it. Except the military stopped calling it that on Election Day, realizing that that was a gimmick that was, again, a lie to the American public. But what's taking place at the White House is now a sinister attack, not just on CNN, but on the entire press corps. There were aggressive conversations yesterday with correspondents from PBS, with correspondents from NBC, and, of course, CNN. And this is a president of the United States who has got America's institutions under attack. It's all part of the polarization of American politics, which is why the next 2 years are going to be so bruising and so ugly.
Simon, I do have to ask you, when we played in the newsroom earlier the full soundbite of Jim Acosta asking questions to Trump and him answering them, you do see a reporter who is very persistent and when his time is up, is unwilling to yield the mic to other reporters and is even talking when he doesn't have the mic. Is there any truth to the accusation that he's trying to make his name through these confrontations rather than his journalism?
Yes, of course there is some degree of truth to that, and of course there is some degree of showboating that is taking place in that particular instance. But look, The history of the White House press corps is filled with people who have courageously asked presidents questions they don't want to answer. And the most famous example, the former White House correspondent for ABC News, Sam Donaldson. He and Ronald Reagan went at it all the time, but Ronald Reagan understood the fundamental compact that reporters are there to ask questions on behalf of the public. This president does not respect that compact.
Jason, if I could ask you, you did a lot of media appearances over the midterm elections. What do you make of this back and forth with Donald Trump and more broadly his approach to the mainstream media?
Well, I find it to be very dangerous, and I think the other reporter was absolutely correct that Jim Acosta is a good, diligent reporter, and he was doing his job. Also, we know that Sarah Huckabee Sanders essentially told the American people not to believe their own eyes, and telling them that he, assaulted some young woman, which was completely false.
Yeah.
When we can all see they essentially are gaslighting America, essentially saying, "Don't believe your own eyes, believe us." And this is one thing that Donald Trump does, and one thing that's very comical is that Donald Trump has the audacity to call someone else a terrible person, which I think is absolutely hilarious.
But Jason, on a serious note, do you find that the channels are really reporting things as they are, or have they moved into the editorial and giving their opinions constantly and inviting people on who just give the same opinions?
No, I absolutely think that, and CNN is very much, I would say, guilty of that, in that, they have basically both channels, or all the big channels, have become echo chambers, and there's not really much debate, and there's not much, reporting anymore. And part of that is a product of Donald Trump polarizing the American public so much, that we really aren't hearing one another anymore.
Okay.
We just argue.
Well, CNN, along with other networks like MSNBC and ABC, are generally anti-Trump and quite liberal-leaning. Fox, the president's favorite network, is a notable exception. But online, conservative commentators are able to make their presence felt, especially on YouTube, which is the second most popular social media source for news in America behind Facebook. Here's a sample of some of the most popular conservatives.
So they've been plotting their return for 2 years. They're well-funded, they're well-organized, they're angry, and so we got to make sure that we get to the polls and vote Republican.
I know that I probably shouldn't be saying vote left, vote right, be independent, but nah, go ahead and vote right.
People are so sick of what the Democratic Party has embraced, which is identity politics.
The small-mindedness on the left is how they have convinced themselves that everybody on the right is a bad person.
A Democrat victory will reward, and this is the worst thing about it, it will reward their deceit.
Every time leftists lose a political battle, they just claim the system is broken, right? Trump wins, we abolish the Electoral College, or impeach him.
I'm hoping for Republican victories, and that is necessary but not sufficient.
And the left is having a hissy fit. They're doing everything they can to stop this country from prospering and everybody thriving. Yes. So you know what you got to do. You know it. You have to get out and vote. Make sure you vote Republican. Make sure you vote right, so you won't get left.
Well, the inimitable Diamond and Silk there. Let's go to James White. James, you know those two?
I know of them. I don't know them, but I know of them.
You look fond of them.
I know them.
Yes, I am.
Okay, let me ask you something. A new poll by Rasmussen says that President Trump is around about 40% approval rating among African Americans. Is that true? And how do you account for that? And then we've got to go to Jason because he's laughing his head off there.
Okay. Well, that's unfortunate that he's laughing. Here's the point. I'm not a pollster. I mean, Rasmussen, I think that polling firm called the election right, or they were closest to right back in 2016. If that's the case, that's fine, But if I could add, sir, Jim Acosta, the CNN news guy, he is not the president. These reporters, these journalists, they're not the president. They're not elected officials. They're not responsible for anything. As a member of the Texas legislature, I get briefings from the Texas Department of Public Safety. I know exactly what's approaching the border and what's crossing the border. So when I hear these reporters talking about this is not an invasion, this is just this is just this, they don't know jack, okay? They're not responsible for anything. Their butts are not on the line for anything. They're nothing but a bunch of political hacks. And that's what Jim Acosta was, and the president was right to put him in his place. He should be there to ask questions and not be a political hack for the Democratic Party.
James, if you're getting the best information on that caravan, you tell me. I mean, who's in the caravan?
I think it's a mixture of people in the caravan. Yeah. I think you got a mixture of people. You got some people that are actually bad dudes, okay, bad hombres, just put it out there, that don't need to come back into the country if they've already been in the country and been expelled. I do believe you have many people in these groupings that are hurting, but that needs to be dealt with within the laws and the values and the interests of this country. So, you know, I get the reports. You have people that are grinning and snickering on your screen here, but they need to come down here and their butts need to get online and get these briefings and be responsible for something.
Jason, I think the grinning and sniggering has to be you. So now account for yourself, young man.
Now, as far as the caravan and it being an invasion, we have to understand that there were children and toddlers in there, and I don't think the United States is a very smart and tough nation. I don't think we'd be invaded by 3-year-olds. The other thing that I would say is that...
Now, you know, can I stop you there, Jason? Because, look, we've had mischaracterization on both sides, okay? So nobody's saying that 3-year-olds are going to scale the wall and get in, but evidently there are huge numbers of young men there, and we have no idea what their intentions and motivations are. But maybe we should stop exaggerating on both sides, okay? So...
Absolutely. That's why we have Border Patrol, and that's why they vet people. That's why we find out who's worthy of asylum and who isn't. You know, I believe in the 40,000 plus members of Border Patrol to be able to figure those things out. I believe in law enforcement and their ability to do that. The other thing is the 40% number of African Americans is a joke, and he knows it. He knows that African Americans, some polls have it down as low as 3, and we know that Rasmussen is a Trump poll. African Americans are not supporting this president. You can see what it is in terms of the exit polls in this last election. In this midterm election.
We are so running out of time. I would love to go back to James now. He's the one who's laughing, but I've got to come back to Mika because she will kill me otherwise. Mika, yes.
Yes.
I live in Texas, and I spoke with a special FBI agent who lives in Arizona, who is also living in a border state. What he told me is that in Central America, the homicide rate equals 1/3 of the homicides internationally, and that is because of gang violence. So first of all, there are elements. Not everyone in that caravan is a criminal, but there is evidence that there are individuals that have infiltrated that caravan that are not only associated with the gangs, but additionally, we have 6+ drug cartels operating in Mexico that have infiltrated Arizona, California, Texas, and parts of the United States. The president has daily intelligence briefings. He has access to the FBI briefings, and additionally has knowledge, direct knowledge, that there are individuals that are criminals in that caravan.
Okay, we're fast running out of time. I've got to get to the Jeff Sessions. Simon Marks, over to you. What is behind the timing of Donald Trump firing the Attorney General, Jeff Sessions?
Well, we don't know for sure, but we do know that Donald Trump has wanted to be rid of his Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, because he's furious about the fact that the Attorney General had to recuse himself from oversight of Robert Mueller's investigation into ties between the Trump campaign in 2016 and the Russians. And so Robert Mueller now finds himself reporting to the man, the acting Attorney General, who created the description of his investigation as a witch hunt, a description that President Trump, of course, has heartily echoed over the last several months. And while it's not possible to say that Donald Trump intends to terminate the Robert Mueller inquiry, if he does intend to terminate the Robert Mueller inquiry, that would have to begin with the firing of Jeff Sessions.
Thank you, Simon. Final question goes to Mika Mosbacher. Mika, the chances of the president winning a second term. What have the midterms done to those?
Galvanize the base. And I agree with the president. It is smart politics for the Democrats to play ball with us. They can investigate or they can legislate. They can obstruct and resist, or they can work together for the good of this country.
Mika Mosbacher, thank you. You get the final word there. Jason Nichols, Simon Marks, and James White, thank you all very much. Before we go,
thank you.
Some Republican candidates didn't want Trump's support. The day after the election, Trump was actually pleased they lost.
You had some that decided to, let's stay away, let's stay away. They did very poorly. I'm not sure that I should be happy or sad, but I feel just fine about it. Carlos Cubella, Mike Kaufman, too bad, Mike. Mia Love, but Mia Love gave me no love. And she lost. Too bad. Sorry about that, Mia.